morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
If you have ever ridden to the top of the ridge on an early June morning and looked down at a meadow full of cattle, knowing your job is to get them gathered and shaped up and moved to another part of the range, then you'll probably appreciate the value of a good ranch horse. And we'll be talking about that today, along with, of course, the one and only Baxter Black.
And then suddenly, from the primordial pablum arises somebody who says, I ain't buying into these beanie babies, this HMO and chasing cows on a four-wheeler.
The Rangeland News looks at range and pasture conditions and concerns.
That is starting to cause some declines. Grasses are beginning to brown out. Conditions are dropping.
And we'll look back at a classic piece of cowboy poetry this week from the late Bruce Kiskadden.
When the owners ship out cattle, they have all that they can do. The buyers and the waddies, they're mighty busy too.
On the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a guy just bought his first horse and he wants to know what kind of bridle and what kind of bit he should use. The editor of Workin' Ranch magazine and longtime working cowboy Tim Obryne will share some real savvy insight into handling cattle on the range, as well as looking out for members of the crew that might be riding colts, and you'll enjoy his comments.
What we've come to realize is that the horse is the only complete livestock handling tool for the job.
And we'll get rolling with the late Curly Musgrave and this great song written by Rob Dinwoody.
Open up the gate, boys, let the horses run in that old corral. Dustin hooves and wide-eyed snorting broncs we know so well. A herd of 7-year-olds brought in from the northern range. Never felt the touch of a hand or the tug of a rope, well, it feels so strange. And it could have been midnight or gray wolf or the strawberry roan. Same kind of horses, them old boys just broke and rolled. Their mamas were Mustangs and the daddies carried their blood from Spain. Same kind of horses run today. Same kind of horses run today. Got your eye on the coyote done while his head is down and his butt's to you. Shake a loop in your lariat and throw your hula hand straight and true. Hobble up his hind leg, put your rigging on and cinch your up tight. Put your foot in the oxbow stirrup and you cheek the bronc when you pull that blind. And it could have been midnight or gray wolf or the strawberry roan. Same kind of horses, them old boys just broke and rolled. Their mamas were Mustangs and the daddies carried their blood from Spain. Same kind of horses run today. Same kind of horses run today. While I put a handle on him, he's 16 hands of muscle and brawn. Start him out in the round corral, when he starts to buck, boys, he turns it on. Riding circle all summer and brushing steers in the fall. Kind of hoss at the end of the day, when you ask for more, he'll give you his all. And it could have been midnight or gray wolf or the strawberry roan. Same kind of horses, them old boys just broke and rolled. Their mamas were Mustangs and the daddies carried their blood from Spain. Same kind of horses run today. Same kind of horses run today. And it could have been midnight or gray wolf or the zebra gun. Same kind of horses, them old boys just broke for fun. Their mamas were Mustangs and their daddies carried their blood from Spain. Same kind of horses run today. Same kind of horses run today. same kind of horses run today.
A well-known cowboy around these parts is Wendell Stolfstus, and he's actually better known by his nickname Puck. That was acquired for his passion for the game of hockey, and Tim Obryne spent a lot of time riding with Puck a few years back.
Somebody like Puck, like Wendell Stolfstus, I remember, I ponied him out one night, it was late in the evening in the summer, and he was riding a pretty big 4-year-old bay gelding that was pretty ranking. And I was going to help him out and pony him out into the steps there out of Dry Farm one day after work, and he gets his ictus all figured out and everything. He gets riding his horse around, kind of a few laps around the round pen, and then he turns him out, and there's a big kind of a catch yard there right beside the cabins at Dry Farm. And he turns him out into there. I'll never forget, I was standing at the gate sitting on my horse there, and Puck was riding this horse around, and he just went to hogging it right across that big yard coming towards me. And Puck was getting bucked off, and he was like upside down like a starfish, grabbing onto his McCarty with both hands, coming off the right front shoulder, just maybe 15 feet in the air, and he was still talking about this hockey game that he was in. I'll never forget that. He's talking about this hockey game. Upside down, right in midair, and I thought, geez,
I'm about to land on my head, but I'd still want to finish this sentence. I saw him put on a real good bronc ride at the O'Keefe Ranch Rodeo, where the Douglas Lake team won it again. Yeah. And I'm not sure why. He's getting to the age where maybe he'd be better to let some of the younger guys do that, but he decided that he'd be the representative in the bronc riding. And he did have a night latch on his saddle. Yeah. But by gosh, he put on a pretty good ride. Good enough so that they could win it, and that was part of the reason.
Yeah, and that's, he's pretty handy that way. He's always been really good that way, but, never, he's been never out to get anybody, or, he's never been out to, dominate the horse. He knows how to ride those type of horses. He's never been scared of them.
Yeah.
But you got to understand that riding them outside and riding them inside is a totally different deal. Yeah. I mean, that's what the Bronco Man thing is all about. I've ridden, and I know a lot of these guys have ridden on cruise, and some of them just sit back and watch you die, and others, they bail right in there, and.
Yeah. Well, we'll get deeper into the art of horsemanship and working with cattle with Tim when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Tim Obryne has ridden the ranges from Nevada to the Gang Ranch in BC. His company, Calico Beef Consulting, is in demand for their expertise in the livestock industry everywhere. He lives in Nevada now, where he's editor and publisher of Working Ranch magazine. We shared some ideas a while back on helping out the member of the crew that might be riding a green colt.
The first thing to keep in mind if somebody on a colt with the group you're riding with gets into a heck of a storm is to make sure, if you can, that colt doesn't go through a culvert or into a fence or someplace where, it's really pretty dangerous, to try and keep them lined out where there's a little bit of room.
Oh yeah, for sure. One of the handiest things is when somebody that knows what they're doing. Like if your bronc gets his head between his legs and you can't do anything about it, and you're just sitting there, trying to finish up, make the ride. If somebody comes along and can get that horse's head up, so where you can get it bent around, that's probably the biggest thing, But I've been on a few of those rides where there's nothing you can do. You can't physically pull his head up, and somebody will come along and slap him a good one,
mm-hmm.
with a Rommel or something, and get his head up a little bit so where you can get it bent around. So, if you have to do that. But again, that's, I think that the proper thing to do is what we're doing now, and that is our horsemanship has improved so much in the last 20 years that, and I don't think it's really necessary to be messing with horses like that out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially, with the kind of horses and the things we know about them now, it's much easier to kind of work around that kind of thing and have the horse's trust and confidence build up without having to go through that in a lot of cases.
Yeah, like
or
we're
just
not
maybe a little bit of it, but not the amount that they used to like to buck.
Yeah, we're not rolling them into saddles and blindfolding them anymore and tying a hind foot up and then, cranking everything loose and heading out over the prairie. I mean, we're just not doing that stuff anymore, and I think that's the main thing. And I think our horsemanship having improved that much, then we're probably not going to see a lot of that anymore anyway, But that doesn't mean that you can't have a guy babysitting a guy on a colt, though.
Well, for sure. I mean, when that, and it takes a long time, it takes months and months and years for a horse to really become seasoned and totally reliable and everything. And in that process, there is a period where that colt is going to be somewhat unpredictable and really green, but he's still going to have to be learning the process. And the guys that are riding with a guy on the colt have to be aware of that. And it's a big help if they know what they're doing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to spoil the colt. You can have anything can happen, and like with the two guys on the big pole gate, sometimes like the gates are heavy and the wind is pushing against you or whatever, and if that gate comes along and slaps that colt, along the back hock or something, it could spoil him for a long time on opening one of those gates. So that's the whole idea behind having that safety guy there. He just makes it so that gate opening experience the first half a dozen times is a pleasant one.
Through the ages, right by our side, through everything we've done. Fighting wars, working farms, on the racetracks they still run. They help us with our chores, and we ride them just for fun. Yes, the horse is still our partner, and will be till we're done. But things have changed, it's faster now, and we're talking miles per hour. When it comes right down to it, we're still talking horsepower. Yes, more and more horsepower for everything we do. The horse is still our partner, and will be till we're through. People talk about the times when horses were needed by all. We worked them day and night, always at our beck and call. We took them all for granted, draft horses and ponies small. Sometimes not so kind, like in war when many did fall. But things have changed, it's faster now, and we're talking miles per hour. When it comes right down to it, we're still talking horsepower. Yes, more and more horsepower for everything we do. The horse is still our partner, and will be till we're through. Horses help us out, working ranches, fairs, and rodeos, help the Amish get about. When we need a partner, for work or just for fun, the horse is still our partner, and will be till we're done. But things have changed, it's faster now, and talking miles per hour. When it comes right down to it, we're still talking horsepower. Yes, more and more horsepower for everything we do. The horse is still our partner, and will be till we're through.
That's Richard Martin and horsepower. And Tim Obryne spent a lot of time working with big feedlots and he talked about the importance of good pen checkers on good horses.
Well, and I'm hoping that it kind of stimulates some people to, to move on and maybe think about the feedlot, because we need pen checkers, we need good ones, and we need people that can handle horses, and it's a great job. If you get on the right crew in the right place and in the right area, it can be one of the best horseback jobs that there is. It's not that difficult to do. Like, it's not that difficult for the horses to do. It might be a little bit hard on the pen checker, because they're being asked to do more and more things nowadays with quality assurance and animal welfare and that sort of thing. But it is a great job, and it's also an excellent job for any of the young ladies out there that want to work with horses. It's appealing to them as well. So that was kind of the whole idea behind that too.
It seems to me, in the early days of the feedlot industry, and when I grew up back in the 50s and 60s, the horse was kind of being phased out of agriculture, and the only horses that were still around on a lot of the places were a couple of work teams that had been pretty much replaced by tractors. And even people that had 50, 60, 100 beef cows around preferred to work them on foot or, with a pickup or a tractor or whatever they could. But it seems like in the last, 10 or 15 years, people have come to recognize the value of a horse even in confined livestock operations. Like, I can't remember a whole lot of feedlots that did work with riders back then.
Yeah, and now a lot of these lots are so huge that it would just wear you out to walk pens. You just couldn't physically do it,
And you don't want to take a quad or a motorbike in there and start sorting fats.
No, but even though a lot of these big yards do use quads to do long distance moves of pens of cattle, and that saves on horse flesh, and I think that's all right. But I think what we've come to realize is that the horse is the only complete livestock handling tool for the job. You can go out and check with a quad, and you can move with a quad, and you can tag cows with a quad, but you can't doctor anything with a quad. And that's the whole idea here. It's like the horse, if you've got the right equipment and the know-how, you can go out and do anything you need to do with your cattle off a horse.
Right.
And that's the only complete unit that we have out there, and that's where people are getting back into it.
Baxter Black is next with his unique view of how the world works, or how he thinks it should, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, and I'll be right back after this with a little peek at stubbornness.
Your land is a legacy, a challenge from those who tended it before you, to build on their foundations. At Corteva Agriscience, we understand what it means to be the stewards of a legacy. We embrace the challenge of building on the foundation of Dow AgroSciences to maintain your trust, to bring new solutions, to help you care for your land. See how we can help build your legacy at rangeandpasture.com.
And for our Canadian listeners, just check www.corteva.ca, the Canadian website.
If it can't be done a horseback, I ain't interested. Many a cowboy's gone down the road after speaking those words of the boss. It's the essence of cowboy pride, where survival, good sense, and regular meals all take a back seat. He'd rather go hungry. Well, there's a lot to be said for stubbornness. I have a tendency to be attracted to zealots, fanatics, and opinionated people. Curiosity, maybe, but with some admiration. Even if I disagree completely with their cause, I know where they stand. Pure belief, black and white, uncompromising principles. Winston Churchill, Ralph Nader, Charleston Heston, Alan Keyes, Joan Baez. These are not slippery people. They might be slick, but they're not slippery. Now, of course, this narrow-mindedness makes most people nervous. We have been weaned, raised, and educated on compromise, tolerance, and publicly taught to turn the other cheek, to get along with our playmates. It's the way of the world. It is democracy, the United Nations, players versus owners arbitration, cats and dogs in the same house, and sheepmen versus cattle. The world preaches moderation, no rough edges, no eddies in the current, live and let live. A vanilla world without Tabasco, hot fudge, Bob Dylan, or Jerry Falwell. And then suddenly, from the primordial pablum rises somebody who says, I ain't buying into these beanie babies, this HMO and chasing cows on a four-wheeler. Well, these purists often get mowed over, ground down, or hoisted on their own righteous petard, but they certainly roil the water for a while and make us re-examine our own comfortable apathy, at least for a time. And sometimes, in rare cases, they alter the course of things for years to come, like FDR, Martin Luther King, Ronald Reagan, Cesar Chavez, or Joan of Arc. They rolled into the stream like the Rock of Gibraltar and changed the world. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Thanks for listening.
The Rangeland News is next with a look at everything from range and pasture conditions to what Billy thinks the birds had to say about me. It was nice to see Larry Krause at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival in March. He's written some real nice songs like this one.
I don't know why you'd look my way. There ain't much here to see. Just a dusty hat and faded jeans. That's how I have to be. But you light the room up with your smile. Take my breath with every move. I'm wishing that you'd notice me and we could be in love. But if good things really come to pass, wishes did come true, I'd be riding on that northern range together with you. Your city charms flow easily, all the folks here know your face, and I know that I can't offer you half what they can in this place. I'm shy and quiet and I know my spot in the order of this world, and it breaks my heart to know that I can't have you for my girl. But if good things really come to pass, wishes did come true, I'd be riding on that northern range together with you. This little spread that I call my home, with my horse and dog and cows, it would not measure up for you. You're used to all life allows, and dreams of holding you at night are all but lost in vain. I'm just a cowboy from the hills, you don't even know my name. But if good things really come to pass, wishes did come true, I'd be riding on that northern range together with you. I said if good things really come to pass, wishes did come true, I'd be riding on that northern range together with you.
The news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says the summer grazing season started out with things looking pretty good across the West, but there are some concerns about moisture now. Stephanie Ho is standing by with meteorologist Brad Ripley with a look at current range and pasture conditions.
USDA meteorologist Brad Ripley says moisture has been good for the nation's pastures.
Given the widespread distribution of moisture this spring, no surprise that rangeland and pastures across the country are in general in very good shape heading into June.
He says many states in the country have pasture numbers at least 80% good to excellent.
Roughly two-thirds, 67% of the nation's rangeland and pastures are rated good to excellent, just 7% very poor to poor.
At the same time, he warns of a developing drought situation in the southeast
that is starting to cause some declines. grasses are beginning to brown out, conditions are dropping. And so if you look at that 7%, very poor to poor, a lot of the concentration of that is now in the southeast.
He points to drought issues in pastures in Georgia, South Carolina, and New Mexico. This is Stephanie Ho for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
The head of the Canadian Cattle Identification Agency says changes to traceability regulations could cost $1.5 million, causing the organization to look for ways to recoup that money. Speaking at the Livestock Markets Association of Canada convention in Leduc recently, Anne Brunette Burgess said the high figure is a result of the organization estimating it needs to hire 20 staff for the first 3 years. She said the new employees will primarily be entering data considering that a lot of movement of documents will be submitted by paper or over the phone. The traceability changes could come into effect by 2021, requiring producers and others along the value chain to get premise ID numbers when groups of animals are moved. Chinese plans to boost inspections of Canadian meat imports only affect pork rather than all meat products, as the Federal Agriculture Ministry initially had stated, according to a government representative. A ministry notice said that the Canadian embassy in Beijing had been told Chinese customs agents would open all containers of Canadian meat and meat products, and that in some cases 100% of the contents would be inspected. But the official, who requested anonymity given the sensitivity of the situation, said the increased inspections only targeted pork. Year-to-date figures show a 24% increase in the volume of Canadian beef and a 40% jump in the value, according to Canfax. Sales to Japan have doubled since tariffs started to come down, thanks to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. And while the U.S. has had tremendous growth in live animals and beef production, Canada's herd remains unchanged. The most recent census shows Canada's cow herd is at its smallest since 1991. And continuing drought in the West could push the decline even further. About 500,000 heifers have been kept back for breeding, and that's not enough to replace the cows that have been processed. In the meantime, though, feedlots are full and packers are operating at near capacity, and the sector is also rebuilding in southern Alberta, with new lots being built and feed yards that have stood idle now opening again. Well, as Wandering Cowboy and the amazing Western Spirit Band will be on stage for the 43rd annual Hive and Danes Country Music Picnic at the Danes Ranch in Innisfail, Alberta. The picnic runs from August the 8th to the 11th, and among the great entertainers, the one and only Tim Huss and many more. And tickets are available at the Black Knight Inn, and as always, there is free camping on the grounds with a weekend pass. If you want more information, you can call Ivan, 403-358-2295. And then we'll be heading up to the Stony Plain Cowboy Gathering, August 16th to the 18th, along with folks like Doris Daly, Ben Crane, Ryan Fritz, Ed Peekycoot, and many, many more. And there will be, at least 4 of us there playing river song guitars. You can get the schedule and the information at stonyplaincowboygathering.com or call 780-718-53... No, let's do that right. 780-718-5379. The next regular cattle sale at the BC Livestock Co-op Kamloops Yards is on June 25th, and the next Williams Lake sale is July the 18th, and the one in Vanderhoof on July the 19th. And you can get all the information at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, over at the Innisfail Auction Market, Innisfail, Alberta, regular cattle sales every Wednesday, and the next horse sale scheduled for June the 29th. Get all the information at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And I guess we're down to the final item. Billy and I were up in the high country riding along, checking fences and gates, and fortunately for our age, our hearing is still okay, I think. And we enjoy hearing the songs of all the different birds around at this time of year, and we stopped for a while to rest the horses. And Billy said, "Hey, those birds are talking about you." I said, "Really, what are they saying?" She said, "Cheap, cheap, cheap." Wonder how they knew. And that's the Rangeland news. Coming up in the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a fella wants to know what kind of bridle and what kind of bit to use on a horse he just bought. There's more from Tim Obryne and another good song of the West when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The subject of bits and the right one to use can be a big one, but we'll try and tackle it for one listener on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file coming right up. First, though, so what are you doing from August 29th to September 13th, 2019? Well, Billy and I will be hosting our 18th annual Spirit of the West cruise, and here's where we'll be going. We'll fly to Dublin, Ireland. We'll be visiting an Irish thoroughbred breeding farm. We'll be hosted by the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation, and then we'll sail to some historic and beautiful places including Cork, Belfast, then Glasgow and Inverness, Scotland. And we might even get pictures of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. And we'll have stops in Paris and London. Now, this is something we've always wanted to do, and we'd love to have you join us. Get all the information at 1-800-530-0131. And check our Spirit of the West cruise page at hugh-mclennan.com and our cruise Facebook page. Our cruise director, Jim Bell, spent a couple of days out here at the ranch last week. I didn't get too much ranch work out of him, but we were busy putting the final touches on the cruise, and boy, we have a lot of added extra value on activities this time. And really looking forward to visiting a famous Irish thoroughbred breeding farm and being hosted by the Irish Cattle Federation and much more. The ship is beautiful, and Ed Peake, who has been on many of our cruises along with his wife Diane, and he's been part of our cruising cowboy band for a long time, wrote a neat poem about how folks feel, and just ahead of the horse training file, this is what Ed said. I met a guy the other day, he's just like all the rest. He asks about this cruise we take, the Spirit of the West. I said, well, yes, I'll tell you, and it's just my point of view. But if you check with others, you'll likely find it's true. A certain kind of people, and it's mostly farmers' wives, been waiting for the chance to go for more than half their lives. The place was paid for long ago. It wouldn't do no harm, but damn it, that old cowboy's afraid to leave the farm. She says, there's others going. You won't be the only one. And surely after all these years, we've earned a little fun. I think it's time that we began to learn how to relax. And did you know that for some, you can write this off on your tax? What's that you say? I can't believe that's what I heard is true, but if it is, then I suppose that's what we ought to do. They make the trip and have some fun. And by now, he's lost his fear, and when they get home, he says, by gosh, let's go again next year.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
At Irvine Tack and Western Wear, you won't find this.
Saddles? Yeah, we got a few. Hey, how big's your backside? Oh, what'd I say?
But you will find this.
Saddles? You bet. We carry over 1,400 saddles here at Irvine's. Western saddles, ranch saddles, trail saddles.
The one and only Irvine Tack and Western Wear, something for everyone, from cowboys and cowgirls to city folks too. It's Western Wear with a welcome twist. Off exit 305 on Highway 2 by Crossfield, open 7 days a week.
Canada's largest Western store.
And of course, if you can't get there, shopping online is a lot of fun at urbansaddles.ca. Well, a new horse owner wants to buy a bridle, but he's confused by the variety of bits, especially the kind of material that goes into the horse's mouth. And the subject of what type of bit to use is a huge one, and it depends on so many factors, including the rider's level of experience and competence and the type of foundation the horse has. So today I'll just look at maybe the type of metal used to form the mouthpiece and how it has an impact on how well the horse accepts it. Bits that are made of iron, also referred to as sweet iron, have a pleasant taste for the horse, and they're basically what's called cold rolled steel. But another benefit of it is that it naturally oxidizes, that means rusts, and it encourages salivation. And of course, a moist mouth lubricates the bars in the tongue, so the bit slides easily across that delicate tissue. And a horse with a moist mouth also I've found tends to be a little more responsive and receptive to rain contact. Cyprium is an alloy made of bronze and copper. It's durable and it promotes salivation without losing its luster. And a lot of horsemen like to have a copper inlay in a sweet iron bit. I've got a few and I like the way they work. And I've got a nice egg butt snaffle that is straight copper, and the horses like it, but one of my mares has really chewed it up. I only rode her in it a couple of times. They are pretty soft. Stainless steel is strong and it retains its appearance, but it doesn't have any taste and it does contribute to a dry mouth. If you do decide on a stainless steel bit, make sure it's got a copper roller if the horse is used to that type of thing, or inlaid copper on the cannons or on the link. The copper cricket, of course, is a popular choice for a horse that's been brought along properly in the bridle horse process. And for urban saddles and western wear, that's this week's Horse Training File. Our horses get a daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration, and I'm pretty convinced that they do real well with it. You can find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. Tim Obryne talks about the art of handling cattle from horseback and how he learned a big lesson when he was riding for the big TS outfit in Nevada. First, though, a Canadian treasure, Gary Velgard.
There's a shack along the road, the old cowboy calls it home. There's not much to do but watch the trucks roll by. So he sits and drinks his tea, rocking to some memory. Just a drifting cowboy taking one last ride. His dreams are like the ghost, and the only life he knows. His silver spurs, they jingle and they shine. Once he was young and hell on wheels. Now can you picture how he feels? Still riding broncos somewhere back in time. And those prairie winds still blow like they did so long ago. Ah, but the tumbleweeds don't grow quite the same. And the old line riders ask, when will the buffalo come back? And will the drifting cowboys ever drift again? He rides into the town as the sun is going down. He ties his trusty pony to the rail, and some trail boss and his crew, they stand him one or two, but tonight we'll find him out there on the trail. Drifting cowboy, taking one last ride, just a speck out on the prairie, and a little spark of glory in my eyes. And those prairie winds still blow like they did so long ago. Ah, but the tumbleweeds don't roll quite the same. The old line riders ask, when will the buffalo come back? And will the drifting cowboys ever drift again? Will the drifting cowboys ever drift again?
back to a conversation with Tim Obryne.
The thing I noticed when I was lucky enough to ride down at Douglas Lake a couple of times was that a lot of these young cowboys have a great sense of exactly where to be to get the right impulsion with that group of cattle. For example, even when we're wanting, it might be 300 or 400 in the bunch that we're trying to move, and just at the right point, somebody will sort of ride towards the cattle at the perfect angle and then turn back and ride alongside the herd towards the rear of the herd, and at a certain point that starts them moving forward. A lot of people that handle cattle all their lives don't even understand some of these basic things.
These big outfits, the ones that are good, the ones that have a heads-up kind of an attitude and a good crew and a good bunch of cattle and horses and dogs and a protocol, they didn't just get that way by accident. They made a conscious effort, even if nobody ever even talked about it or mentioned it to anybody, but they've been making a conscious effort to train those cattle. You know, I can tell you exactly the time, the day that I learned to shape, you know, what you just referred to is called shaping the herd, and, you know, shaping one side or whatever. And, you know, I was working on the TS, and you know, we were taking a couple hundred pairs, whatever, heading towards a big slip wire out in the wide open. And the boss motioned for me to go ahead and get this gate. And I went ahead, and I ended up going a little bit too close to the point, and I stalled everything. And then when I came back, you know, I was kind of like, you know, they were trying to get things going again, and the boss just took me aside, and he just, you know, gently, just quiet in one sentence he said, you know, he showed me, he said, you go on up and stay outside and go up straight ahead, and then bend your horse in to the left and come down and bounce off every shoulder of every animal that you can. And when you get to the back, figure eight your horse's head back in again, and go back and do that same pattern all over again. And that's going to shape your side, and we'll be working on this side. And nobody had ever said that to me, or I never knew that it was happening before. I just kind of was, you know, as a young lad, because I was only 20 years old, you know, I was just kind of doing whatever I thought everybody wanted me to do. And that was it. It was one sentence. It took about 8 seconds, and that was all the instruction I ever got on that. Once he turned that light on for me, I could see, and then it got me watching some of the experienced cowhands and watching some of the other little things that they were doing. Like, you know, lots of times I'd wonder, you know, why would they, you know, if you want to push something out a gate hole, why would you stop your horse and back up a step?
You can find out lots more about Tim at handlingcattle.com and workingranchmag.com. Coming up is this week's classic Song of the West, and then a masterwork from the pen of Bruce Kiskadden in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Time for our classic Song of the West segment. During the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, Jimmy Wakely released records, appeared in a bunch of B-Western movies with most of the major studios, and he appeared on radio and television, and he even had his own series of comic books. In his screen debut with the Jimmy Wakely Trio, it was in a Roy Rogers Western called Saga of Death Valley in 1941. Later on, in the 60s and 70s, he developed Shasta Records, and he owned 2 music publishing companies, and he converted part of his California ranch into a recording studio, producing records for himself as well as other country and western stars like Tex Williams, Tex Ritter, Merle Travis, Eddie Dean, and Rex Allen. His backup group had 2 different names, the Eddie Dean Trio and the Eddie Dean and the Saddle Pals. And I think I mentioned this before, back when rodeos had a lot of contract acts performing during an intermission in the show, some of the stars that did that kind of thing were Monty Montana, famous trick roper, Rex Allen Sr., who did them everywhere, and actually he was honored as Rodeo's Man of the Year at one point, and Jimmy Wakely was the act at the Edmonton Rodeo of Champions, where I saw him when I was about 12 years old, something like that. He was riding a beautiful Palomino that he'd borrowed, I think, from Tony Ziegler, who headed up the great drill team known as the Edmonton Sheriff's Posse back in the 50s. Anyhow, here's Jimmy Wakely in a song that he wrote for his group, the Saddle Pals.
Saddle pals, always together in all kinds of weather, reeling, rocking, rolling down the trail. Saddle pals, though skies are cloudy, we smile and say howdy, reeling, rocking, rolling down the trail. At the end of day, we hit the trail and ride. Saddle pals, we'll be in clover when our work is over, reeling, rocking, rolling down the trail. At the end of day, we hit the trail and ride. Saddle pals, we'll be in clover when our work is over, reeling, rocking, rolling down the trail.
The Center for Western and Cowboy Poetry has released a wonderful 3-CD collection called Masters of Cowboy Poetry Volume 3, featuring the works of Bruce Kiskadden recited by many of today's fine poets. You can find out a lot more about this at their website, cowboypoetry.com, and this one is done by Bill Siems, the man on the fence.
There's a man that I would speak about. You see him everywhere. He puts out conversations till he mangles up the air. No matter what the subject is, his ideas are immense. But he don't go into action. He's the man that's on the fence. When the owners ship out cattle, they have all that they can do. The buyers and the waddies, they're mighty busy too. Who explains the situation to a bunch of idle gents? I needn't tell nobody. It's the feller on the fence. Who is it that can tell you how a bronco should be rode? Who is it laughs the loudest at a feller when he's throwed? Who tries to be sarcastic when he makes his wise comments? Whose pants is full of splinters? It's the man that's on the fence. Who is it puts the swagger on but never gets in trouble? If he ever gets in danger, who can vanish like a bubble? Who can talk about the battle till he holds the crowd plumb tense, though perhaps he never seen it? It's the man that's on the fence. Who hollers at old-timers as if they were his pals? Who has set and spurred the splinters from 100-odd corrals? Who has spurred the gates and fence rails till the boys all know the dents? It's the man that's always present. It's the feller on the fence. No, he ain't no good for nothing, and he sure does eat a lot. And he does a heap of talking that would get a real man shot. But the outfit tolerates him, though he ain't worth 30 cents, for he's really right amusing, that feller on the fence. And it helps an honest waddy, when he's done his best and failed, to stop and look and listen to that feller on the rail. And he knows, down in his gizzard, if he's got an ounce of sense, that he's done a darn sight better than the man that's on the fence.
Well, thanks so much for riding along this week, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. As always, thanks to our fine support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And you know, if you need tractor parts, any make, any year, Mark's the guy that can help you. And the place to find him is bctractorparts.com. The new issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine is out now, and you'll find it at your favorite newsstand or just see cowboycountrymagazine.com. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.